Hello and welcome back to the Anfield Edition podcast. My name is Owen and joining me today we have Ty, so say hello Ty.
Hello again, lads.
We also have Inverter, so say hello mate.
That's
These podcasts are released twice a week on Fridays and Mondays, so follow at Anfield Edition to be notified when they go live. Today we are talking about a rather controversial topic, our owners, Fenway Sports Group, otherwise known as FSG. Having took over the club on October the 6th, 2010, people have mixed views on their ownership since saving us from the Gillette and Hicks era. Now, as most of us are now FSG out, given the recent transfer failings, it's worth taking a trip down memory lane to that time. With our club on the verge of bankruptcy, we wouldn't be sat here discussing the club today, would we, Ty?
No, obviously that was a huge thing for us. So at one point they were saying about insolvency, so we we were very, very close to either going into administration or not existing anymore. It was a Hicks and Gillette when they dug their heels in. So yeah, it was huge. At the same time though, they did pick the club up for a bargain, 300 million. Even 10 years ago was an absolute steal. So yeah, credit where credit's due. They saved us. Obviously, it's been hot and cold since then, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what you touched on now with 300 million, the club's now worth, was it like in the billions now? So the profit they've made. What was that, Inverter? Sorry,
1.1 or 1.2 around that. That's what it's estimated.
Jesus. So the profit they've made off of us,
Quadrupled.
Nearly tripled.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Inverter, obviously, you have quite strong views on the ownership. What do you think there, like the profit they've made off of us? Could you see that as sort of taking advantage, or do you think they genuinely were in to, save a club there?
Well, I think that's a common misconception, to be honest, because whoever came in, they would have saved the club. That's inevitable. If you're going to buy the club, you're then going to do whatever it takes for them to not go into administration.
Yeah.
So technically, yeah, they did save the club, but I think regardless of whoever came in, that everyone would have saved the club. So obviously we can thank them for that, but ultimately, like I said, everyone would have done the same. And but yeah, about the asset, obviously they've got a lot of profit, but I think whoever came in, they would have made the profit. So I'm not gonna spite them for that. Fair play to them, the great businessmen and so on, to make that sort of money at the club.
Yeah, definitely. To play devil's advocate here, and I'm not supporting their ownership in saying this, but they have improved Anfield like as an asset. Obviously, they acquired the stadium as well as the club with the new main stand, which was last season. Instead of breaking the bank on a new stadium, which fans were often, most of the fans were against, moving home, given Anfield's heritage and history. They haven't renamed the stadium either, like a lot of other ownerships have done. We have like the Allianz Arena, the example there, Bet365 Stadium, like sponsorships coming in and sort of taking away from the history of the English clubs and taking away the names of the stadiums that obviously are quite iconic. They understood the fans' concerns about moving as well. We have to be thankful for the way they have sort of treated the club, and they've respected the history and the heritage, surely, Ty?
Yeah, it's a big thing. It was discussed one night about moving to Stanley Park or staying at Anfield and expanding it. So they've done really well to expand the main stand. I know there was a bit of an issue with expanding the Anfield Road end as well. I'm not too sure if they're going to revisit that. Inverter will know more about that than me, obviously being from the area. So again, there's pros and cons. They've done brilliant in a way to get the stadium now to 55,000. I still think there's a lot more room to grow if we're going to catch the likes of, United and Arsenal going forward, though.
Yeah, you could look at Spurs' new stadium as well that's being built. How fast that seems to be going up. They're going, 60,000? I think something along those lines.
Yeah,
60,000.
60, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you could look at that specifically and think, they're setting the benchmark there, especially given Levy's ownership of the club and how sort of tight string a budget he's running. Even they're willing to go and expand the stadium to that extent. Now, I'm not advocating that we move from Anfield. I think that it's important we stay there, but an expansion to the stadium, like you said, the Anfield Road end, would have been nice to see. Obviously, Inverter, you know quite a lot about this subject, so I'll leave that one for you to comment on now.
Again, credit where it's due to FSG. Most of the fans will want to stay at Anfield. Obviously, we're a historic club. The stadium's been around ever since we bought it from Everton over 100 years ago. So, in that sense, yeah, fair play to them. And about the Anfield Road extension, at the moment it's been denied. But one thing I will say, I know we've still got the land, and we've already bought the housing that we had to buy to extend that as well. So that we won't foresee any problems in the future with that. So it's there for the taking if we do eventually decide to persist with that. But at the moment he denied it. So.
Do you reckon FSG would ever sanction that? Because I know you said something earlier about it being profitable or not. Could you see them doing it, or would it be a new set of owners that would go ahead with those plans?
The reasoning that they had was that it wasn't profitable at this very moment in time. But I'm not sure what they're going to do with ticket prices. Obviously, if they go up, it might become more profitable. And seeing as they've got the land, they don't have to pay for that. Because obviously with the main stand, there was like huge problems with buying the extra land, because there was, I think it was 2 streets of housing there. So they had to sort of negotiate with all the owners about how much they'd get for their respective home. And a lot of people went to court because they obviously didn't want to move out to their home street that they grew up in their whole life. So in that sense, there won't be any more problems. So it just depends on what they do.
Just adding to that, on the Anfield Road end, do you remember when they tried putting the ticket prices up?
Oh yeah, I was literally about to mention that, Ty. There was the £77 thing.
Yeah, it was because obviously they reversed the decision in the end, and they were kind of praised for it afterwards, even though they probably shouldn't have mentioned it in the first place. But they did kind of add a bit of a snide comment on the back of that, because when they come out and said that the Anfield Road end is not going to be possible to expand, John Henry come out and said something along the lines of, I don't know if there's going to be a next step now, because ticket prices here in England are a bit of an issue. So he kind of blamed the fact that we didn't expand on that, on the stadium there and then, because of obviously the ticket pricing. He was basically saying that because we didn't increase the ticket pricing, then basically couldn't afford it in terms of being self-sustainable. But again, that kind of says to me that they're not willing to put their hand in their pocket, then are they?
I think I will say about the ticket prices that it was also like almost a bit of propaganda, really, because the system that they used to have was there used to be like 3 categories: Cat A, B, C, and then for obviously C was like the 12th to 20th teams, and they sort of charge like £40 or whatever for those games, and then sort of like 65 for the more expensive ones, and then they came out with the £77 ticket, but that was only for like 3 games in the whole season against like the top teams and like the top seats, and now they've frozen the prices altogether, so it's one going rate for every game, so regardless of whether you go and see Brighton or Manchester United, you're paying the same. So in that sense, I'm not sure about the legitimacy, but I saw that someone calculated it all, and there's minimal difference between the system they wanted to apply with the £77 ticket to what they eventually changed it to. So
that's interesting, yeah. I mean, touching on the attendance, bringing it up to 55,000 as of now, you'd think raising the prices and then eventually what would happen is we'd have a larger attendance. That's just a money maker in itself. When you look retrospectively though, ticket prices aren't a big margin of what the clubs make. It's all in TV deals and sponsorships now. But having them raise the attendance and they would maintain that high price, like I would not doubt that they would do that, knowing that they can still sell out a stadium at that price given the size of the club and how many fans we have. It makes sense that people would pay that price if it was there, because if rules of supply and demand. But what frustrates me the most is that they would raise the prices and price fans out of the game, the fans that would go there and the fans from the local area, when they have all these TV deals and sponsorships there and the money, and that's the real money they're making. That's what frustrates me the most, is I feel like it's not considering the fans' thoughts, it's considering their own pockets. What would you add to that, Invert? Obviously, being from the area, you go to quite a few games, definitely more than me and Ty do at least. What would you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think the majority of the protests were the local people, because they're getting priced out. There's been like a few incidents over the years with like the black flags, and enough is enough. Like banners, I've seen them a few times over the years. So obviously supply and demand would state that they could raise it to £150 and you'd still sell out, because the season ticket waiting list is so big that they've closed it for like 3 years now or so on. So if they wanted to, they could, and again, fair play to them. Obviously, we don't know whether it's actually beneficial for us, because now we're paying one going rate, like I said, but at least they appeared to appease to those fans, and obviously they didn't have to do it at all, like I'm saying, due to supply and demand. But I do think they understand the importance of having that local base to an extent, because if you come a tourist club altogether, there goes the whole intimidating atmosphere, which ultimately does win us games sometimes, as I've witnessed it myself. So I think they're sort of aware of that, and they're aware of how traditional of a club we are, and how we're known to have such a passionate fan base, and ultimately they don't want to get rid of that.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to transfers now, which is what owners are judged by in the modern game. Looking over their time at the club, you could certainly make a case that all they do is replace players, not improve the side. Given the amount of top class players we've lost, Suarez would be the most prominent example, I would say, in recent years. Given the net spend of the club, and particularly this window, it's more evident now than ever, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at figures earlier actually on our net spend. Surprisingly, we have spent almost every window since they've been here, but it just pales in comparison to the other top clubs. So I'll give you a quick run through for an example now. So this window, we had a net spend of 43. Obviously these figures might be skewed, but I've got it all from Transfer Market, so blame them if it's wrong. But so plus 43 million this window. Last year we made a profit of 4 million. The year before that, 15-16, we spent 33 net spend. 14-15, a net of 47. 13-14, a net of 23. 12-13, a net of 54. 11-12, a net of 40. Obviously, they come in 2010, so I'm not too sure if this figure is skewed, but we made a profit of 3 million in the 2010-2011 window. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of windows there where we've actually made a profit. And I compared it to Manchester United's of everyone's, and it's even in comparison to theirs, right? So I said just now 17-18. I'll do them both now together. This one we were plus 43. United 140 million. Last year when we made a profit of 4 million, they spent 120 net.
Jesus.
15-16, I said we were 33. They were plus 48 mil. 14-15, we were 47. They were plus 131 million. 13-14, we were 23. They were plus 67. 12-13, we were 54. They were plus 59. The year before, the closest has probably been, we were plus 40. They were plus 43. And in the first year FSG come in, we made a profit of 3 million. They had a plus net spend of 10 mil. So just that in comparison is ridiculous. And that's not even me going into Chelsea and Man City, who we know is going to blow us out of the water, 10 times the amount. So we can see, just to touch on your point, there's always been replacements. It's never been kicking on, and that's where we failed, So we see the likes of, it is probably skewed, of course, with Abramovich coming in at Chelsea and the Arabs coming in at Man City. It's been silly money since we've had a look at those takeovers, but at the same time, you need to start looking at that now. When the season where we nearly won it, when obviously Gerrard slipped and everything, that would have been the perfect time to win it, because you had all these millions being spent here, there, and everywhere, and we would have done it as a team without needing to do that. Mm-hmm. Now, as time has gone on even more, as much as it hurts me to say, I just can't see us doing it without having that reinforcement, the same reinforcement that Chelsea and Man City have had.
Yeah, looking at the stats, pretty sure that Man City will have more net this year than we've had over the past 5 years, because I think they spent like 130 million on fullbacks alone, not to mention Bernardo Silva and so on. So
it was in the 200 million net, I think, in Verta. So
yeah, exactly. So
I genuinely
that's probably
think
more
it's
than
spot
FSG has spent since the start
of
their 7-year reign. But again, in this window, people seem to think that we sort of haven't really made replacements. We've just added to the squad. But one thing I will highlight is just a few points I made. And obviously there's news that Chan's going to be leaving for Juventus in January. So it sort of makes you think, is Ox the replacement for him in advance? Obviously Origi going out on loan. Is Solanke the replacement for him? Coutinho, likely to leave. Fair play, we held on to him this summer, but next summer he's likely to go. So will Keita replace him? Did we sign Robertson so Milner can go into midfield? It all makes you think, like, eventually have they just made replacements? Because for this season, yeah, maybe we have marginally added to the squad, but like we mentioned on the other podcast, obviously like wingers, centre backs, so on. Now there's also news about Klein. Klein's meant to have some sort of injuries. He hasn't been featured in the Champions League squad, so maybe Gomez will sort of be the second right back, which leaves us to potentially 3 centre backs for the Champions League in Klavan and the 2 starting centre backs from Lovren and Mata. So obviously the squad really is thin, but one thing I will mention is that the replacements seem to be good finally. Obviously Suarez left, and then we signed Balotelli and Lambert as the replacements. Now we've got Naby Keita, who's wanted by Barcelona, so I'm coming in for Coutinho, which is fair enough. We've got Oxlade-Chamberlain, again, who was wanted by Chelsea. Arsenal wanted to hold on to him. So at least the replacements are getting good. That's the only light at the end of the tunnel, I suppose.
Yeah, the owners were pretty much under the microscope all summer for their treatment of Coutinho and the stance they took on that. They're set to hold onto the Brazilian and may continue this stance actually into next season, as I touched on in an article. They're basically, what they've done is obviously they came out with that big statement saying he's not for sale any price whatsoever, and they're actually wanting to continue that into next season and next summer, and they're just holding him pretty much for ransom and not saying pretty much you can't leave the club. How would you assess the club's stance on Coutinho, Ty, this summer? Should he have been let to go?
No.
Or was it, the right call in the end?
I think it's the right call. We going into the Champions League again now, like that's the big difference for us. We're going into, we've got a heavy Premier League season, still no winter break, Champions League, and at the same time now, we were saying a couple of podcasts ago, it's about time now that you'd expect to start seeing silverware being brought in. So you need to start taking the cup competition seriously now as well. So by the time you let Coutinho go, even in the best case scenario, if we did let him go, we probably would have brought Lamar in. They would have spent the money. They would have had to, because it would have been a disaster of a window if that was to occur. But yeah, you want to start challenging for silverware. We needed Coutinho. I think it would have been a great statement to keep him and add Lamar in on top of that. But it kind of adds to what Inverter was saying, is it pretty much seems to be like a one in, one out policy, doesn't it, at the moment?
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Yeah, right decision overall. The whole thing about they might not let him go next year will be complete bullshit. They'll do exactly what they did with Suarez. They got the promise of 1 more year. Suarez went on to have his best ever season, and I'm hoping Coutinho will do the same, because obviously he's got a World Cup year to play for now as well. So if we can get one brilliant season out of him and bring some silverware, then I think you can't criticise him for that.
One thing I don't understand is why we didn't sort of bring in Lamar and Van Dijk, because obviously then we get the money for. With that squad, we'd probably be favourites or second favourites to win the Premier League. So say we do win the Premier League, we then straight away get the return for the investment that we made in the summer. Then maybe that will sort of make Coutinho think like, yeah, this club are in it to win it. We're finally going to be winning trophies at this club. I've just won a Premier League. Maybe we will have done well in the Champions League as well. So you sort of need to show Coutinho something to make him want to stay. Yeah. But after this transfer window, I'm genuinely not surprised that he wants to leave for Barcelona, because they've probably got a better team than us. Plus, they're willing to spend. They've got a lot of money now as well. They've replaced Neymar, and they're probably going to make further investment next summer along with him if he was to join. And ultimately, next window or even January, I think we need to show Coutinho something. Even a League Cup's not enough for him. For him, a League Cup will be nothing. We genuinely need to win either the Premier League or the Champions League to hold on to him. And it sounds stupid, but if we want to hold on to these world class players who are truly in the highest caliber of the lot, we need to win the top trophies that accompany those players. Otherwise, he's simply not going to stay, is he?
No, 100% hit the nail on the head. I can't see it, regardless. Like you said, unfortunately, I don't see us, with the squad that we've got right now, winning the Premier League.
Yeah,
had we, like you just said, had we brought in Van Dijk and Lamar, we're up there. I can see us challenging. I touched on it in my most recent article as we rated the transfer window. The squad we got at the moment is going to be a kind of repeat of last year, where we're scrapping and hoping for top 4. Whereas Lamar and the Van Dijk deal especially, improves our back line hugely. And the Lamar deal would have given us amazing strength and depth in that midfield, and either even in the front three, because we know we can play wide left as well. So we're the same boat. We're 1 or 2 injuries and suspensions away from an average bench again. I think we have an injury to Sadio Mane again or Mohamed Salah. Yeah, okay, we know Coutinho can slot into the front three, but then you're weakening your midfield. Whereas if you had Lamar in there, you put Lamar in the front three and you still got Coutinho in that midfield, or you drop Lamar in as number 10, you can put Coutinho up there. So it would have been like for like in terms of quality. Whereas now you're still looking to the bench and you're relying on Solanke, young Ben Woodburn, and so on and so on. So it completely changes our image of the bench. Whereas you could have had the likes of Lamar, Sturridge, Wijnaldum or Lallana, if one of them would have been on the bench as well. So you look at match winners from there, rather than kind of hoping and trying to bring someone off the bench and hoping for a miracle and relying on an 18-year-old to produce something special for us.
Yeah, I think 1 step forward, 2 steps back is a phrase often associated with the owners now, given our stance on selling our best players and then not really replacing them with the same calibre. Ultimately, what you touched on there was, if we'd brought in top players, we'd be able to keep our own. And I think because it shows that you're actually showing intent to go out and win trophies, whereas you're happily accepting to lose players and then just going for, a tier down. If you were rating the players in tiers, we would go the one below and try and get them at like a snap rate or something. It's not good enough from the owners to not keep the best players, but then it's not good enough to do the right thing to keep them there. Because they could prevent this whole blowout that we've had, like we've had with Suarez before, like you said. You can prevent that by just bringing in the right players. When you bring in the right players, you're going to have your star players look around and think, well, hold on, we're actually assembling something, a squad here, something special that we can actually go and challenge titles for. But simply, they haven't done that on the transfer window, have they?
I'll let Inverter go now, but what I'll do is put to you both. Do you completely put the blame on FSG there, or we also know how stubborn Klopp has been with his transfer policy? So I'll put that there first and then Inverter carry on that, because I don't think you can solely put the blame on the owners.
Yeah, definitely.
Slightly Klopp's fault.
Yeah, Van Dijk is Klopp's fault to an extent, because he didn't have an alternative. But allegedly he wants to stick with sort of the players he set out to sign, and then if it doesn't work out, he'd rather just have nobody. He says quality over quantity quite a lot, but with the centre backs we've got at the club at the moment, I think that's a stupid philosophy to have. There's been, I also saw a tweet today that apparently there's Laporte and Koulibaly, they're available to sign on pre-contract agreements in January because their contracts are running out. Obviously, 2 class centre backs where we've got a centre back crisis, so it would make sense. We'll see what plans out with that over January. But Lamar, I think you can certainly pin the blame on FSG. Monaco allegedly named the price of €100 million. All we had to do was allegedly offer that, and then we would have signed the player. But like I said, I always saw him as a Coutinho replacement. So if we did sell Coutinho, they'd sort of sign him. That's where the whole rumour started. It was just in case Coutinho leaves the next day, and then most of the fan base would have been all right with that. But what do you both think? Do you think in January there's a possibility of us going back in for Lamar and Van Dijk? Or?
Yeah,
I think it completely depends on how we get on with the season. I think if we're in with a shout, I think if we keep in touch with the rest of the pack, the other top 5 clubs there, then I think they'll see an opportunity there to kick on and maybe go ahead and win the title, or go into the deep stages of the Champions League. The Van Dijk one, I won't completely... Well, it was their fault in the first place because of obviously all the leaks and everything, but in terms of not signing this transfer window, I thought it was going to happen. I'll put my hands up and just thought, no matter what was being said, I genuinely thought it was going to happen. But they were saying that they needed Southampton to invite a bid, or if Chelsea were to bid and Southampton accepted it, that gives Liverpool a chance then to go in and match it. And we knew obviously Van Dijk wanted to play for us, but it didn't happen. And I think the reason why that didn't happen is because we've been threatened with a transfer ban. I know a lot was being said about that, and how serious was the threat, but I think it must have been considerably high. Otherwise, they wouldn't have released an apology in the first place.
Yeah.
What you said there, Ty, is that in January, if FSG see the opportunity to kick on, they'll sign players. But wasn't that the case last season, and then we were rumoured around Draxler and so on, and we didn't sort of consolidate. So what I think will happen is if they see that the squad's doing well, they'll see that as an excuse to not sign players in January, and then sort of hold their hands up and say, yeah, injuries aren't our fault and so on.
It's so frustrating to see as well when you know there's a clear solution. That's what annoys me more than anything, when you can see the solution there, but the clubs fail to address it.
Yeah, I mean,
part of it is the owners, part of it's Klopp, but, go on.
Yeah, but last season, the whole fan base saw that we just needed a few more additions and we could really kick on, because leading up to New Year's, we just beat Everton in the 94th minute, and we were top of the league, I think, or second, one from behind at the very worst. So we knew Mane was going. We knew we'd lose out. We'd lose our only sort of fast winger. So I think if we would have just added some quality to the team, then there was a chance to kick on and win the Premier League potentially. But I sort of think the owners just simply don't have that mentality. They're just happy to sort of stagnate and just like stay in top 4 ideally, because allegedly the payout you get between finishing 4th and top of the league is like 20 million. So from a financial point of view, I don't think they care. It's also just about appeasing the fans, which is questionable what they care about, really.
Yeah, we spoke about titles quite a lot today. Just looking back over FSG's ownership since 2010, we've only got the one League Cup to our name, which was in 2012. I think we beat Cardiff, wasn't it? Was it Cardiff tie? Yeah, so we simply haven't won enough in 7 years. I know we've come close a few times, but close isn't good enough, is it?
No, you expect far more. Obviously, when they come in, we had Hodgson there, so that was a horrible start. They got rid of him. Fair play. I think the whole that bringing Dalglish in was I think it was a lot more sentiment than what was actually needed. Everyone loves Dalglish. He's one of the best players to ever played for the club. And you can arguably say Rodgers was. They were trying to create something big. I could see what they were going for. We were linked with Rodgers and Martinez, 2 young coaches, bright, had a lot of potential going forward, but they weren't names that could attract huge signings. They just can't do it. And we're now starting to see it for the first time in a very long time with Klopp. He's got a player pull. We haven't been able to say that for a long, long time. When was the last time you've seen a player turn down Chelsea for Liverpool, turn down Arsenal for Liverpool and so on, or wanted to leave Arsenal for Liverpool and so on? It hasn't happened. It's been Suarez wanted to join Arsenal instead of us, and that never would have happened previously. So for the first time in a long time, we've got the right manager at the club, but he needs the backing. What I would say is, from what we're looking at with Klopp, he doesn't seem like he's a manager which isn't being backed. We're not seeing poor body language from him. He seems to always come out and say the right things, and we know how stubborn he is. It happened, like Inverter just said as well, in that January when we knew we were going to be losing Matip and Mane. He wanted a certain player in, and he obviously couldn't get him. I don't know if it was Goitze was being mentioned as well, and it just didn't happen. So it seems to me that something has to change very slightly, not dramatically, but we know Klopp's stubborn. We know to a certain extent that FSG will spend the money. We don't know whether that it is a strict policy of 1-for-1, but they will spend the money, as we've seen. But there needs to be a slight change to the strategy. I think they need to say to Klopp, look, okay, we know what you want a certain individual, but that's not always going to happen. We've seen it now with this window. We couldn't get Van Dijk, but you need to get an alternative in. Why you've just come out and said we've got 175 million to spend on deadline day, and we spend 35 million of it on Chamberlain, who isn't even a player that walks straight into that first 11. So how can you expect to kick on? It doesn't happen. Now you go and spend that 175 million on Van Dijk and Lamar. It's a statement. The last time we qualified for the Champions League, you said it earlier, we brought in Balotelli and fucking Lambert. So we're not kicking on. We're always standing still, and that's the most frustrating thing for me, because we're looking at Man City spending, and Verta said it already, 133 million on fullbacks alone, and they still want to go and get Sanchez as well. Mind, they would have had 6 world-class attacking players to choose from. We've got 3. And no like-for-like backup.
Yeah, I think comparing us to Man City, Man United, in FSG's defence, it isn't exactly fair. They do have the cash, but not as much. And also, maybe look at like Chelsea with Abramovich, who's been pumping money into the club consistently for years on years. He pulled the tap on it this year, didn't he? He didn't spend as much this year as he has in previous. Do you think that they genuinely like have faith in the manager and the squad we have currently, or is it just like they're genuinely not willing to spend? Like, is there a difference here that we're not seeing? Maybe that we do have the right players in. Just this is like not my view, to be honest, because I completely disagree with this. But just putting the question out there, is it that they genuinely back Klopp and the squad we have, or is it that they're just not willing to pull the cash out?
I think it's the latter, personally, because just purely basing it off last season as a recent example. As we've already mentioned, they didn't further invest in the squad with Dillema and Van Dijk. Also, looking back a few years with the whole Suarez saga, we were linked around Sanchez. So I think it would have been a completely different story if we went and signed Sanchez, and then that's all to a sign for Suarez that along with him we could potentially challenge for the elite trophies. But like I've said, the top players don't see the top commitment, and absolutely regardless of how you spin it from an owner standpoint, one trophy, one League Cup in 7 years is pathetic for a team like Liverpool. But then again, can you solely blame them for us losing the Europa League final, the League Cup final, and a few semis over the years? Also, can you blame them for us not taking the Premier League across the line in the last few games? I think you can blame them due to the lack of investment. But when we're in a position when we are in the final, I think that's down to the player mentality then. So I wouldn't just blame. I wouldn't blame them for everything. Obviously, it is a majority because investment is not the biggest thing in football. Without money, the club's non-existent all of a sudden. Yeah. So the game's obviously changed quite a lot since just obviously back in the old days, you'd have just Bill Shankly trying to persuade a player to join. There was no agents. There was no nothing. Now it's just huge money associated with the sport. It's also almost become a business and not a sport.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, yeah. Don't get me wrong. It's like just basically emphasising everything you've just said off the pitch. They've been great. You know, they saved us. They've expanded the stadium to an extent. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with the Anfield Road end. They've managed to keep players, Coutinho and Suarez, maybe for another season. But is that investment which is going to be the driving force to kick us on to make sure we're regularly finishing the top four to challenge for a title? And I just think if this is to carry on for another season or two, it's going to go one way or the other. At the moment, it looks like Klopp is getting the back in, but if he was to continually miss out on certain targets and he's got to wait another transfer window, is he then going to start to get pissed off? Because there's got to be something. It can't just be down to Klopp, who says, I want this player, and then all of a sudden we don't get him. Because like we've seen now, Owen, you just mentioned on it with Chelsea, is it solely to do with them kind of pulling the plug on having unlimited amount of money to spend, or have we seen for the first time in a while Chelsea are being turned down by a lot of players because they wanted Kyle Walker and he chose to go to Manchester City. They wanted Van Dijk and he wanted to play for us. They wanted Sandro and he decided to stay at Juventus. So Chelsea haven't always got that pull at the moment, because I think they're not the only club doing it now. They've got Man City and you've got the PSGs and everything. So there's a lot more to it now. Mm-hmm. And I just think if we don't start investing the way, don't get me wrong, it's not going to be in exactly the same way Man City and Chelsea do, but if we don't start having a window like we expected to have, if because we didn't get the Van Dijk and the Lamar deal over the line, I just think we're going to fall further and further behind.
Yeah, you spoke about Klopp as well. I was going to say, could you see like relations between the owners and the manager breaking down? We've seen it quite frequently. I mean, Benitez with Newcastle, Conte with Abramovich. Could you see that being a repeat for us at Liverpool, Ty?
Not right now, I don't think, because it seems like at the moment, for the time being, that Klopp has got a certain vision for the club. He wanted Keita. He didn't expect him to get a deal done this window. I know he hasn't actually come in, but that's set in stone for next year. He's wanted certain players to come in, and he's shown that because there's been no alternative. Inverter said it already. He wants this man, this man, and this man. If he doesn't get him, I'll wait next window. And I just think there's a bit of a danger in that, where if clubs are continually improving their squads, by us waiting 6 months, that's 6 months maybe where we've missed out on keeping close, at least, until some of the clubs and staying within the title shout until January. Whereas we now might get to January and be 20 points behind, and then it's over.
Yeah, one thing I was is didn't we hear exactly the same with the Hood? I'm sure all the top reporters, Pierce, so on, said, next summer we'll look to regurgitate the interest, but we didn't, and he went to Borussia Dortmund. So I do think it's a dangerous game we're playing. Obviously, great business with Keita, but there was reports of Van Dijk potentially going to Juventus. So if Juventus have another great season and they sort of show their interest in Van Dijk and so on, will we have that pull that we've got right now? I think we need to start acting on situations again with Lamar.
Yeah.
After one more class season, obviously Lamar only had one good season. He's still young. He's still moderately unknown. If he goes out and does that again, catches people's eyes, especially the scouts in the Champions League, like he did in his first good season. I think there's a lot more competition then. Barcelona could be knocking on the door, Real Madrid, whoever, and then I think we miss out. So
yeah,
it's risky, the whole thing. And I also wanted to mention, Chelsea, obviously, allegedly they've had a poorer window, but even then they've signed a new spine, haven't they? They've got a centre back in Rudiger. They've got Bakayoko for 40 million from Monaco, and they've got Morata, who's obviously playing really well so far, along with Firmino being the only player to get 2 goals and 2 assists so far. So I think that speaks volumes that even though they had a pretty good season, a pretty good window, people are still sort of frowning upon it, which is strange, really.
You got anything else, lads, to add before we round this one off?
No, like I said, for me, the main point for me is just kind of the frustration in not kicking on. And I just think what Inverter said there is we're not being opportunistic at the moment. We've got the manager there, and we're back in the Champions League now. We're now in a situation where we're seeing players coming out openly and saying that they want to play for Liverpool. Van Dijk, Lamar was said to have turned down Arsenal in the last couple of hours of the deadline day, and he said he doesn't want to play for a team in the Europa League. And just ahead of that, a lot can change between now and January. Like we just said, if we're 5th, 6th, if we go out with the Champions League early, it's like an opportunity wasted. Whereas if we had those players already, the difference they could have made to our season right now could be huge. But we'll never know. We'll have to see where we are in January. Hope we're still there or thereabouts, and then hopefully get those deals over the line then.
Just briefly regarding Klopp, I think if he was really truly disappointed with the owners and so on, would he have signed a 6-year deal? That makes you think. Allegedly he's missing out on targets, but if he was unhappy, I don't think he'd just go out and sign such a long-term contract after already missing out on some targets. But maybe it's the connection he's made with the club. We don't know really, but
yeah,
if he was genuinely very unhappy, like I said, I don't think he would have signed that contract. So
that's true.
Conclude on that.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have time for today, but we'll be back later on this week looking ahead to the big game against Man City. So where can the listeners find you off the podcast, Ty?
Again, my personal one is Tyrone_PT, and Anfield edition is Ty_talks LFC.
Mine's @invertibility, just the one.
That is a little nibble there. That's definitely a little nibble.
Not at all.
So be sure to give them a follow, and once again follow @Anfield Edition for updates on when the podcast is released. It's a pleasure talking to you lads as always, and thank God we've got this FSG debate out of the way. We've been wanting to do this actually for quite a few weeks, but we thought it'd be best to wait until the window was done, just to make sure we've got everything off our chest, and I think we have at this point.
I'm sure we'll come back to it soon.
Just 1 week later, we've lost to Man City. We're like, FSG out.
There's the investment. Lamar would have scored.
Right, so say goodbye, Ty.
Cheerio, guys.
Say goodbye, Verta.
It's limited, guys.
That's bye from me as well.